G'day, community, and welcome to the Jock Reynolds Supercoach podcast. I'm Leckdog, and today I am joined by the wonderful Damo, co-host of the Mailbag, which is going wonderfully, by the way. Get your questions in, and make sure you listen. Damo, how are you, and how's the pod?
It's going well. We've had Ben, we've had Swizz from Supercoach Insider, we've had DR from Supercoach with DR, who has a nice little YouTube series going on at the moment. The preseason's off and running, and I mean, starting the mailbag this season in the preseason has been a big hit. People asking lots of questions to try and get their 2023 teams underway, and I think people just want the season to start. People are making all these moves now and making all these what if scenarios, and they just want to see the preseason games and get the season underway and get their team locked into place so they can fix any stupid decisions that they made in the preseason as quick as possible, knowing what they know from the first couple of games.
It's exciting stuff. It's been an exciting preseason so far, so we'll do a little bit of pluggage here. You can go to the website, jockreynolds.com.au. On the homepage, there's a thing called Supercoach 2023 Preseason Directory, which links to all of our preseason content. There's a bunch of stuff here, Damo. There's the Cheapies Guide, the Mid-Pricer Guide. The 2022 scoring breakdown is probably one of my favorite tools that Baron Von Crow creates at the start of every season. It breaks down the season into chunks, thirds, and finals. It's got win-loss splits for players. It's got basically all the information you need to see who starts strong, who ended the season on fire. It's got positional plays. Like, just go there, download that. It's got all your information. Damo, you did some stuff on ruck splits. We've got all the mailbags, the podcast that Patch and I did the other day was a video. This one is going to be a video again as well, assuming the internet works. Got a bunch of stuff, but some exciting things. A couple of new riders on board, which has been the really, really exciting event of the off season. So we've had JG join the riders. He's done a couple pieces, but his most recent one, Damo, switching places, he reviewed all 54 players, gave them a rating out of 10 for classic and draft relevance, and a little write-up about every player, and it's bloody awesome.
Yeah, great to have him on board. He's done some work in the past through different websites, and we're happy to have him on board. And he actually reached out to us wanting to get back involved, and I'm glad he's chosen us to, put his wisdom on a page.
No, he's done very well. And I also want to shout out a new recruit who joined us the same way you can, if you're interested in. He listened to the podcast a couple of weeks ago where we said, if you want to write some content, you want to get your name on some paper and have some people read it, send us a note. Well, Brendan did that. He sent us a note and he started a series of draft content. He's ranked his top 100 midfielders and his top 100 defenders so far. And again, the amount of content packed into this article is just amazing. The effort that has gone into it is really super impressive. So if you're interested in draft, or you want to just see, it doesn't even have to be draft. If you want to see the rankings of the defenders or the midfielders this year, jump on the website, go to that directory, or find the top 100 articles. Just awesome work from Brendan.
Great to have him on board. Nice to have someone doing some draft content for us. We have been asking for it. We have been meaning to do it, but nice to have Brendan actually following through with it.
And finally, two more plugs. The JR team has again joined forces with the Herald Sun to produce a series of preseason articles which go across all their mastheads and Code Sports. Damo, your first piece, which you did with Clarkey, went up on the Herald Sun, the L Plater Guide. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Clarkey led the way on that one, actually. So I jumped in and gave him a bit of a hand with it. We talked about what kind of players to pick, the buy rounds, how the trades work, the trade boosts, all those sorts of things. We talked about leagues. If you're a first-time player and you're still trying to work out how things go, head on to the Herald Sun or Code Sports and track down that L Plate guide. We tweeted it out from our Twitter account if you're looking for it and still can't find it. But yeah, it was interesting to do that again, and great opportunity for us from the Herald Sun.
And then the other piece, and this one you'll know well from last year, is the pre-season rumor roundup, which will be a regular feature this pre-season. The first one started with a bang. Myself and Foz Daddy, Matty Forrest went through, gave a bit of a summary of all the key notes from every single club during this preseason to date. So there's a few rookies there. We mention a few injuries. We talk about just all the goss that you need to know, all the role changes. So head over to our Twitter feeds and find those articles. They'll also be embedded in the post below this on the website. That's the plugs. Now, Damo, we're going to talk about this week's topic, which is, I mean, it's an excuse for us to talk about free agency for this offseason, but we're going to try and find some players who are free agents this year in their contract year that might put in a little bit of extra effort, give you an extra couple of Supercoach points throughout the year community.
We love talking about player movement, so it's always good to have a look at these sorts of lists and see which player might play a little bit above themselves to search for that bit of a payday.
So there's 103 players on the list that are eligible right now. We will read through the list as we go. We're not going to talk about every player because a lot of these are delisted free agents, players that have previously been delisted, so are now automatically free agents whenever they come out of contract. A lot of them aren't going to have relevance, but there is some actually interesting names. And if you buy into the thought that a player's scoring output increases in their contract year, I know Patch, who can't be here to defend himself, doesn't. But then I said, what about Jake Stringer? And he stopped talking to me. If you believe in that, this might give you just a little bit of juice to find some extra players. So let's just get straight into it, Damo. And this list is from the AFL website. The article went up yesterday, which was the 1st of February, 2023. So Adelaide, Tyler Brown, who's a delisted free agent. We won't need to talk about him. Matt Crouch, Damo. I don't think he's going to get an opportunity in the Adelaide Crows team to improve his average, but he's a prime candidate.
He's definitely someone who could start the year off with a bang in the sandful, find himself earning selection at some point, and then having a great end to the season, and then finding himself on the end of a few offers, even from Adelaide themselves. So he's one that we could definitely have a look at. I don't think he's Supercoach relevant, though, and just looking at the Adelaide list, I don't know if anyone else in that is really relevant either, unless people want to have a throw at the stumps for Tom Doedee.
Yeah, Tom Doedee is probably the only one that's kind of relevant. Andrew McPherson, if he can get fit, he's essentially rookie priced, and one we talked about preseason as potentially being that senior body that could play in that team. He's 155k, did have an injury preseason, so he might be a mid-year option for us. Paul Seedsman won't play. Rory Sloane, no Supercoach relevance, and Taylor Walker. I mean, we say no relevance, but he did the last 2 years. He has been very bloody good. All right, Damo, let's jump into Brisbane now. Nakia Cockatoo, delisted free agent, no relevance there. Darragh Joyce got signed as a supplementary selection period player. No relevance there. Ryan Lester, no. Reese the shotgun Matheson, the super sub. He will be the sub every game this year. No relevance there.
He seems to fit into the mold of midfielders where six years ago, these types of midfielders were what people were trying to base their midfields around, and now people want more the athletic types, the players that can play in different positions because of the interchange cap and the way the game has progressed. But that doesn't mean there's not a spot for him. He could end up somewhere and be that Luke Dunstan or Jager O'Meara, or that sort of player that you bring in to beef up a midfield or to give you some insurance rather than a key pillar in your lineup.
Yeah, I think look, he's a forward midfielder who can go forward and apply tackle pressure. He makes the most of the games he does play in a Supercoach sense. 6 games last year for an average of 90.2. Like, I actually quite like Reese the shotgun Matheson as a prospect, but he still needs to break into the Brisbane team to be relevant this year. Certainly one to watch next year, particularly if he doesn't play.
Your man, Daniel Rich, is also on this list. Should we select him in Supercoach because he might have a career year? So the Brisbane faithful, inside and outside, that he's still got it and can play and deserves a nice bit of pocket money.
Look, I love Daniel Rich. He's going to be in that best 22. I've heard some people suggest that he might get phased out, but he's got essentially one still killer skill at the moment that he wields, and that's that boot. He's got a great role kicking out of taking kick-ins and using his kicking ability to get the ball into attack from defense. 2021, which was the year of Daniel Rich, you'll remember I pushed for him hard all year long. Was not allowed to select him, averaged 107. Then last year, averaged 96.5. Look, I don't think he's having a career best year. In fact, he's going to be pushing hard. He wants a flag. He's older. I don't think there's a suggestion he'll retire this year. Maybe he could. Career year? He has to beat 107, which he set 2 years ago. I think he can improve on his average of 96.5 from last year. I don't think he can exceed an average of 107.
That's fair.
He's not in my team, but geez, he's always tempting me.
For more reasons than one. I don't think there's anyone else worth talking about at Brisbane, but there's a name.
I actually would like to just ask you one about Dane Zorko. Now, I know we think he's injury prone. He still managed to play 19 games last year, only averaged 82.3. Apparently, he's slimmed down, I believe. It's the fittest he's been, or, like all preseason, it's the fittest he's been in a long time, but we're not that far removed from him averaging 109 in a year as a forward eligible player.
I think what he's playing for this year is to show Brisbane he's still got it and can keep going. I don't think another team is going to come with a contract for him unless he is prepared to sign somewhere for very, very cheap. So maybe he's relevant as a cheaper forward option because he does only come in at about 400k, but just a little bit above that actually. But I don't think he's going to have a career year. I think he's just going to have one of those solid years where he shows Brisbane that he can still play and perform at the higher level.
So you think in his contract year for Dane Zorko, he's essentially playing for his time to continue at Brisbane, but it's a long way to get that average from 82 last year to be relevant this year.
Yeah, as a super coach option, I think he's probably only going to average maybe 90. I just think he's not going to be part of that midfield rotation enough for him to average as well as he previously has.
All right, let's talk the Blues. There's a few names here. Sam Doherty's at the top of the list. Reportedly, he's already agreed to a contract and it'll be signed before round one. But to be honest, it'd be hard for him to improve in a contract year more than what he did last year because that man is a beast.
Yeah, great effort to overcome his health difficulties and play a full season or close to a full season. He's one that Carlton want to keep around, and he's part of the leadership group or was part of the leadership group. So he's one of the stalwarts there now, and I'd be shocked if he leaves. Great super coach option. We were talking before we hit record that if you were going to select one of the 600k options, he's probably the one that you'd probably want to select. He can play midfield, off half back, scoring doesn't matter either position. He's probably the 600k guy to pick if you're going to pick one in Supercoach this year.
Played all 22 games last year for an average of 109.6. Played 2 games in the midfield to finish the season. I think he scored about a 121 and a 135 in those games. The guy's just amazing and agree. I don't think it'll be a contract year though, because I believe he will have signed before the year starts. Go through the rest of these names for the Blues, and I'll give you a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Sam Durden.
Thumbs down from a super coach point of view. No relevance there.
Lockie Plowman.
Again, thumbs down. Now, he's playing for a lot more than just a contract. We're now deep enough where he probably doesn't need to be in the side or close to it. So Good luck, Lockie.
In saying that, though, as a free agent, the media is pretty strong about there being a key defensive positional shortage. So at 191 centimeters and can play on a taller opponent, there might be a team that picks him up as depth, if nothing else.
I think he'll be on a list next year for sure. For sure.
Uh, have we talked about Ed Kerno and David Cunningham?
No, we haven't. Ed Kerno, I don't think will play this year, and I think he'll retire at the end of the year. And David Cunningham he's playing for a lot of reasons, a lot of reasons. He's playing for primarily not just a contract, I reckon, a career, because he can't stay on the park. Having said that, at $163,000, if he gets a sniff at it and can cement himself as that sort of in that forward, mid, outsidey, pressurey role, he is going to present some value for Supercoaches out there. Has only played 16 games across the last 3 years, so he's just never on the park.
Now, the name that sticks out to me on this is Jack Silvani. There's been a couple of trade periods now where teams have made have asked the question of Carlton if they were willing to trade him. And I wouldn't say they've shut them down, but they have asked quite a lot in return. Now that he's a free agent, could a club come along with the right contract for him where he does move, and could the prospect of that inspire a career year from him? I don't know if that transfers to Supercoach relevance, but could we see him play above himself this season?
It hurts me to say this. He's had a very good couple of years. It hurts me to say this, but I think there's a very real chance that he could leave at the end of the year. I'd be targeting him if I was another club that needs that sort of kind of tall third forward target that can also pressure, but he's also actually really good around the ball. He averaged 76.1 this year in Supercoach, so even if he has a career best year, which was his career best year, even if he has a career best year or a contract year, it's not going to be relevant to Supercoach. But I would not be surprised come the end of the season to see him having fallen out of favour just because they want to put time into Tom De Koning and potentially looking at another club, which hurts me to say, but that's what I think. But there's no Supercoach relevance.
Let's move to Carlton's rivals, Collingwood.
Yeah, the Pies.
The American is a free agent.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one, right? Because I think if he's available for free, someone could talk themselves into him just because he's tall.
Yeah, there's not a lot of players on the Collingwood free agency list. There's only 4 there, and I would say he is probably the one who's most likely to leave if any of them leave. Scott Pendlebury's there. You'd think that if he goes anywhere, it's into retirement. Cooper Murley is only on there because he got delisted to be re-rookied. Jeremy Howe's on there. He's probably either staying at Collingwood or retiring like Scott Pendlebury. And then there's Mason Cox, who could move, but probably doesn't. Who knows? He seems to be more interested in a media career at the moment, anyway. So who knows where his interests lie after this season?
Well, let's talk about Howe and Pendlebury because, and more specifically Pendlebury because we know he's stepped away from the captaincy. We know he is just historically a great player. We know he's moved. He's changed roles as well. I still find myself considering him as an option. Probably not as a starting option, but as a player to look at to target around the buys. And I still think he's capable of pumping out a very good year because he's out of contract and the pressure of not having the captaincy, blah, blah, blah. I just think it's all going to add up to him getting back into triple-digit average in 2023.
He didn't get to Pendlebury as a nickname for no reason. So without the captaincy on his shoulders, he may find a little bit more freedom in the Collingwood lineup to do as he pleases and not have to sort of lead by example, even though he still will. But he may play with a little bit more freedom. He may find himself he may find himself a little bit less selfless and more attacking for the ball, more wanting to contribute to the game, and it might mean that he becomes a super coach option again for us if he wasn't previously.
Yeah, and one to watch, particularly with DPP, the way that works now. So I'll be watching him. And Jeremy Howe's not someone I'm looking at in Supercoach. I know he played 21 games last year, which was really solid. Averaged 84 points, but there's no way he's getting back to sort of those 90 plus scores. I just don't see it.
Jeremy Howe's had some good seasons, had some good starts to seasons, had some good ends to seasons, but his durability has gone way downhill, and I don't think he's someone that you can, in good conscience, start with.
All right, Essendon, Dyson Heppel's probably the headline name. Actually, not the headline name, but a name that's going to garner a lot of attention because he seemed unwanted at the club almost at the end of 2022. He's available as a 480k defender, averaged 87.4 last year, playing for a contract. Damo, is he someone who could jump into relevancy because of that?
I think it all depends on whether he gets the captaincy or not. If he doesn't get named as Essendon captain for the 2023 season, I don't know if he plays 22 games, 23 games, or whatever it is. I
Yeah,
think,
I think that's very interesting, particularly given Scott has said they want to play a really defensive game, and be really. I can't remember the exact word he used, but essentially being really careful out of defense, and not wayward with the ball. And like, no offense, Dyson, but that's not really what I would say his bread and butter is. He's not the most beautiful kick of the footy, and I don't think he's the most accountable player back there either.
no, and that's why I think if he's not given captaincy, then he probably doesn't play the 23 games this season. And if he does get the captaincy, I don't think he's behind the ball. I think he's probably ahead of the ball where he can be more attacking like he is probably renowned for.
Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody is a free agent. He obviously retired and came back. He's $209,000, but a small forward. There's just he could have the best career press season ever, but he's just got no super coach relevancy to us, I don't think. Darcy Parish is so I love Darcy Parish, and at 610k, averaged 111 last year and 114 the year before. I just love Darcy Parish. I hope. I think his starting price of 620k or 610k is too much, but I would love him as in a contract year to just go ballistic and tear this thing apart.
You think he's too expensive at 600 at above 600k?
Yeah, I think if he was sub 600k, I'd be far more interested. But at 610k, I mean, I think he's going to give you 110, which is good, and that's the price tag to get you 110. I'd love him to get me a 115 a game. I don't know if he's got it in him.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Essendon will be really keen to put a contract in front of him as quick as possible to get that pen to paper. How much they offer him, how much other teams going to offer him, it's going to be all very interesting to watch. I think Essendon's the right system for him. I think they need to just tell themselves that he's a midfielder and not move him around the ground so much. Um, sorry, I keep looking at Mason Redman.
Yeah,
A lot of people are picking him in their defense, and he's come out to the media a little bit this week that says he wants to be considered for captaincy. He wants to be one of the main drivers out of the back line. He wants to be a part of Brad Scott's system. He loves what Brad Scott has brought to the table. He's saying all the right things. He's playing the right role. He's in the right position. Could we see Mason Redman pump out a triple figure average, like that begins with 11?
It's not. Look, he is a real consideration for me in defense. I know I spent 4 weeks last season after I traded him in saying I would never, ever, ever pick him again. I think I traded him in when he was coming up against Collingwood. He scored 49, then 176, and I thought, all right, I forgive you. But then he went 68, 63, 55. So he had a terrible, terrible end of the year, but he's prime me picking him territory for exactly as you said. I think he's saying all the right things. He wants as much cash as humanly possible, and the best way to do that is by playing good footy. And we know he's going to be in a super coach friendly role, the second best super coach role there is. Rebounding defender. The best is obviously like inside mid, but it's all lining up for a very big year for Mason Redman, and as you said, a 110 average. It's a huge jump. It's an 18-point jump on what he did last year. But I believe.
18-point jumps in averages used to be laughed at, but we've seen it happen so many times over the last few years now, removing 2020 because that year was a bit strange for averages, but we've seen it happen. Like it's no longer it's no longer a fantasy scenario where this could happen, because we've seen it happen now over the last couple of years with quite a few players.
Yeah. So he's definitely someone I'm considering for my team. At one point last year, I'm just trying to see if they still show the rolling average. No, I can't see the rolling average anymore. But at one point last year, he had triple figure average, which was pretty huge. All right, Fremantle, your boys. A couple of, one very interesting name in this free agent list, Damo.
Yeah, Nat Fife. I think he'll play on. I think they'll offer him a contract, assuming he doesn't break down middle of the year or doesn't return. I think he's going to sign at least another 12 months at the Dockers. Joel Hamling, he's 169k. I don't think he's first choice defender, but they're trying to work him in somehow. So I don't think he's not going to play. I just don't think he's going to play 23 games. Lockie Schultz is on this list because was delisted and then put on the rookie list, but he has to be upgraded to the senior list at the end of this year, and I think that will happen. The name that I've left out, Michael Walters. I'm not saying select him in Supercoach.
Good.
But he's slimmed down. He wants to prove he can still perform at the highest level. And I don't know if he's at Fremantle next year. His good mate Ross Lyon at St Kilda, the guy that got him back on track, the guy that helped him and his family immensely during his time at Fremantle, is now in charge of another team. They need a bit of leadership. They need a bit of culture.
They've got 7 players that are exactly the same role as him, but yes, that's exclusively how they recruit.
But Michael Walters might have changed his name to Jack.
I love it. That's one to watch. I think definitely not someone I'm looking at in Supercoach at 365k because it's been 2 years of mid-60s averages. But yes, interesting. And just for the record, Nat Fife currently in my hypothetical team. Just for those listening at home, I don't actually have a team. I'm just putting players in my brain that I like. And Nat Fife, based purely on history and contract status, is currently in there. Geelong, a couple players here. John Segler, we don't have much relevance for. Sam Menegola, we don't have much Supercoach relevance for. Isaac Smith, even as a forward, no relevance. Reece Stanley, no relevance. And Tyson Stengel, last year was the year to pick him. But Tom Hawkins...
Just move on to Gold Coast.
Yeah, you go.
There's no relevance here.
Mark Blicavs and Tom Hawkins are legitimate options.
I mean, they're options, but they're not going to leave Geelong.
No, but we're talking about, are they going to give us value because they're out of contract? Or do you think there's no pressure for them to perform because they know what they're worth?
Tom Hawkins was on the free agency list like last year. He got a 12-month extension.
He averaged 94. Yeah, that was good.
And it doesn't. Yeah, but he's always in the top 6 forwards. It doesn't matter.
Okay, that's true.
And Mark Blicavs is going to play the same role regardless of where he is. So I think there's no relevance at Geelong. I think these players, you're going to get what you're going to get. Geelong players don't play for a contract. They they play just to get the sub vest.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Let's move on to Gold Coast. A couple of free agents here, or not. Well, these are all free agents, but a couple of players here who came across as free agents this year. Jed Anderson signed with them. I can't see a whole lot of value there.
I'm sorry, but what a sad list of free agents.
I know. Jed Anderson, Connor Blakely, Levi Casbolt, Charlie Constable, Sam Day, and Jake Stein. We don't even need to spend any time on it. The one, if there's a space in the back line, Connor Blakely will play a few games at the start of the year, but beyond that, yeah, none of these guys we need to discuss.
No. And then at the Giants, top of their list is Phil Davis. He was going to retire, so if he's probably going to retire out of this year instead now. Matt Flynn. We haven't heard anything out of the Giants about how their ruckman will line up.
I was legitimately thinking about this today. I was listening to the pod with Dossie, but they were talking about Braden Preuss, and I was like, I hadn't thought about a GWS ruckman in a long time. I thought maybe one of them's relevant.
Yeah, like
I don't think that it's Matt Flynn.
Braden Preuss kind of, if we were to think of the Richmond system that Adam Kingsley has come from, Braden Preuss kind of resembles an Ivan Soldo, and Kieran Briggs kind of resembles a Toby Nankervis. Matt Flynn doesn't resemble shit.
No, he doesn't. I mean, this is a tangent.
I'm not saying he's a shit ruckman. I'm saying he doesn't resemble anything that Adam Kingsley is familiar with from the systems that he's been in.
I've got a big thing for Kieran Briggs. I'd love for him to come in and be the ruckman at GWS at 254k. I would just love that. I don't think it's going to happen. I just love it. But yeah, Matt Flynn, he could have. It doesn't matter what he does this year, really, because I don't think it has an impact in Supercoach. But Harrison Himmelberg, being out of contract and a free agent, coming off a year where he was just bloody dominant when he played behind the ball, is very, very enticing.
He's enticing, but the Giants are still playing with Leon's cube and don't know where to play him.
It basically depends on Aaron Cadman.
Yeah, they basically said as long as the sooner Aaron Cadman picks up the pace of the level of the AFL of the AFL level of play, the sooner Harry Himmelberg will return to defence. But right now, they want him down there to kind of protect him.
Yeah, it's a tough one to read because they've also said that they look at it Himmelberg as an All-Australian defender. So why would they knowingly keep him in the forward line if they know he's good? So
there's some real Matt Rendell areas coming out of GWS in that space.
I'm maintaining the faith. I think in a career year he produces a score. Assuming he's allowed to play behind the ball, I think he averages, let's say, 98 to 103 points per game.
Yeah, I would say that as well. And there's some games last season where after he was moved to defence, he was scoring like 140s for fun. So
yeah. He scored a 130 against Carlton. I saw that. That was fun.
If he's lining up in defence in round one, and you can run to your team and make the change,
I'm picking him
before the bounce down. Make that change. I think you should make that change.
Other free agents, Demo, Lockie Keefe, Daniel Lloyd, Callan Ward, and Jacob Ware. None of them are relevant, and Callan Ward, I don't think is physically capable of having a career best year. And he's certainly, I think he's only mid eligible as well, which I was a little surprised by. I thought he might have played enough behind the ball. Yeah, he's mid only.
So that almost rules him out entirely as a potential Supercoach option anyway. Dylan Moore is on the Hawthorn free agency list.
Yeah.
So is Fergus Reid and Seamus Mitchell, but that's because they were previously delisted.
Yeah. Well, that's why Dylan Moore's here. Yeah.
That's why Dylan Moore's there. Hawthorn, you stupid team.
It's the best thing. It's like the best decision the AFL has made The only asterisk next to that is that Marbia Chol gets a second round pick in compensation. And yes, he was very good, but he was delisted. So why do you get compensation? Anyway, Dylan Moore,
Hang on.
delisted free agent.
Can we go back to that compensation thing just for a second? Because I've just been reminded of something. So in the NFL, if a free agent moves, sometimes the compensation gets awarded straight away. And sometimes the compensation gets awarded based on the year that they have following their move.
Yeah, right.
So for example, the Green Bay Packers are probably only going to get awarded a 7th round selection for the move of one of their defensive linemen because he didn't have that great of a year, and potentially the Packers signing someone else will cancel out getting that 7th round pick entirely.
Sounds like a whole lot of herbs and spices to me, but at least there's some measurable stats behind it because it's based on something that's happened.
Would you like to see something like that introduced to the AFL, or do you think that makes it too difficult?
No, that's the AFL had stuff it up. I'd say the NHL have got it. The NHL's, I think the NHL's one. It's essentially like everything's a 3rd round or a pick later, unless they sign like a ridiculous, crazy contract, and then we might consider something higher than that. I still think no compensation is the best compensation, but yeah, you can't mess with the draft. That's my biggest issue with it.
Okay, if we keep talking about compensation, you'll destroy a blood vessel.
Will go on forever.
And yeah. So anyway, Dylan Moore.
Yeah, huge pick.
Clubs delisting players, they're becoming free agents. We get to see how dumb clubs are, and essentially how good players can be, because getting delisted and put onto the rookie list kind of lights a fire up some players' butts. And we've seen Dylan Moore turn himself into potentially a premium forward.
We talked about 18-point increases being possible before. Guess what? This guy did it last year. He went from 76 to 94 to 95. So he's absolutely in my team as we speak, my theoretical team in the front of my head. I did not know he was a free agent and out of contract. Doesn't that just excite me even more? Doesn't that excite me even? Dylan Moore. Pick him. Melbourne.
How funny would it be if Hawthorn delisting him that one time to create list space comes back to bite them because someone comes along with a nice, juicy contract, like Melbourne, potentially, and says, here is $450K a year. Yep. Come to the Demons. How funny would that be?
I'd love it. It's exactly what happened with not exactly, but similar to what happened with the Hugh Greenwood thing. I love it. Melbourne don't have anyone we care about. Luke Dunstan, James Jordan, Alex Neil-Bullen. I'm sure they're all very nice men, but I don't care about them for Supercoach.
North Melbourne, though, Todd Goldstein, top of the list.
I still think he's one of the safest ruck options we have this year. Is that crazy?
Do you think we all saw how Clarko loved Ben McAvoy? Could you see him turning Todd Goldstein into that?
I don't know if Todd Goldstein... I don't know if you've ever seen Todd Goldstein run. I don't know if he can do anything but stand in the ruck, to be honest with you. But what I can see is Clarko going, shit, I want to win games. The best way to do that is getting the ball into the hands of guys like Cunnington and Davies-Uniacke and...
Fourth quarter, down by Simpkin. 12 points, Goldstein, Shields, Howe, Cunnington.
Yeah, legit.
All into the midfield. All into the middle, just to get the ball forward a couple of times.
I've got no reason to sort of justify this. I just don't see Clarko... I see Todd Goldstein being the ruckman. I don't think Clarko's playing kind of stuffing around with it. So he's... Look, what did he average last year? 92. He's out of contract. He's probably coming towards... Oh, he's still got years left in him, but they're going to be 1-year deals, you'd think. What does he need to do to get his average up? He averaged 93 last year. Yeah, he probably averaged 100 the year before, 112 in the shortened year, 112, 101. Like, he's got a history of scoring. He's probably not going to get back to triple figures, is he? But I can see him doing it. I just don't know, Damo.
And the rucks are so hard this year. It's hard to rule anyone in and rule anyone out until we've seen these preseason games.
I'm going to remain hopeful that him being out of contract, Clarko coming in, him having guys like Cunnington come back into that midfield, so he's actually got someone who can get the ball once he hits it down to the ground. I'm gonna be positive here and think that his out of contract year can see a boost in his score. I don't know if it's going to be enough to warrant selection in Classic.
What about Ben McKay?
All year it's going to be just Carlton fans saying we should get Ben McKay to our team because his brother plays with us. So look, I reckon he'll probably have the best year he's ever had.
He's another one who he's a key defender. Clubs want key defenders. He's coming out of contract at the perfect time.
Yeah, his price is going to be huge. He's going to be a really probably well-paid player at the end of this year. On their list, they've also got Dan Howe, Liam Shields, who they just bought in, Kane Turner, who's perennially going to be on this list forever, and Jack Zeeble, who is going to be banished. You'd think. Has he been training in defence, though? Or did I read that right?
So the role that he had, what was it, 2020? Was it 2020 that everyone had him in their forward line?
2021.
He's playing that role again. Or supposed to be playing that role again.
356k. Yeah, it's interesting.
We answered a question on this on the mailbag with Swizz last week. I can't do it. Especially, he's not the only avenue out of defence anymore.
Yeah. I can't do it, but he's definitely going to outperform his average of 65. That's what I'll say. So in that sense, a contract year for him is going to be a boon to his scoring, but a 65 baseline is not a very good baseline.
We'll go to Port Adelaide. Travis Boak playing with the forwards. Do they think he could potentially have a second coming like Robbie Gray did? Who knows?
He could. Not for Supercoach, though. Not for Supercoach.
Riley Bonner
last year.
Sorry, I cut you off there. Riley Bonner. The Phantom always thinks this guy's going to break out. He's moved on now. Now he's all on Tom Green or Errol Goulden. But Riley Bonner, no one's talking about him.
I think there's a good reason for that.
He plays a Supercoach friendly role. If he can get his game together, he's a chance. He's someone who honestly wouldn't surprise me if we get to round 8 and I click on his name and he's averaged 108 and he's got a 5-round average of 108.
Damo, I think you're crazy, but that's the beauty of this. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I'm not going to start him because it's going to be a nightmare, but it wouldn't surprise me if round 8 I'm looking for upgrades, 5-round average, Riley Bonner 108.
God, if that happens, I'll buy you a beer. Next on this, Charlie Dixon, no Supercoach relevance. He'll be much of a muchness again. Should be healthier than he was last year, this year. So maybe seen an upward trend in total points because he'll play more games, but average isn't going to be relevant. Trent Dumont, not relevant. Tom Jonas, not relevant. Scott Lysette, Damo, who very, very quickly is working his way into, I think, definitely my ruck, and I know you're considering him as well.
It feels like the carpet's being rolled out for him, doesn't it?
It does.
Because free agency, so contract year, he's playing for his next payday. Jeremy Finlayson's going to be out for a couple of months with an injury.
They're not going to roll with like a Bryn Teakle or a Vincentini, or they're just not going to do that over a guy like Scott Lysette. It's seriously, it might be him and Todd Goldstein. Lysette and forget. And he's got a pedigree of scoring. Admittedly, he's not had the super heights of what we expect from our 120 plus ruckman, but averaged 101 across 18 games in 2019, 97 in the shortened season 2020, 94 in 2021, and then he only played 4 games last year, still averaged 87, coming back from injury and all that. So a guy that, a guy that I'm really, really heavily considering. Bummer that he's not forward eligible anymore.
If there is one thing that does worry me about him, and you pointed this out last season, Scott Lysett is very easy to score against because he doesn't nullify his opponents.
Yeah.
So you found that during the 4 games that he played, he gave away the most points to opposition ruckmen.
Oh yeah, he can be a bit of a sieve. Yeah, for sure.
And that's the only thing that is probably stopping me straight away from picking him.
Let's move on. Trent McKenzie and Dylan Williams, also free agents, also not relevant. Richmond, well, they're never particularly relevant in Supercoach conversations, are they? But go through their list of free agents.
Nathan Broad, potentially relevant. A club in WA might want him, draw him back home. Jason Castagna, Trent Cotchin, Dylan Grimes, Camden McIntosh, Biggie Newen, Jack Rewalt, Robbie Tarrant. You'd expect the only name in that list was the name I mentioned, and he was Supercoach relevant last season.
Ish.
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 Well,
he was pretty solid for total points.
Yes.
He was the 93rd ranked player in Supercoach last year. Averaged 83.
I think he averaged 90 plus after the bye.
But yeah, I mean, he definitely could have upside to his price, particularly in a contract year, particularly if he's got interest from outside. I just am not confident that the upside's enough.
He's someone that's going to play every week that is fit for Richmond, and he's a solid contributor for him. And there might be a team in WA where he's from who might want to draw him back home. But I think that he's either going to stay at Richmond and get a nice payday there, or move and get a nice payday elsewhere. I don't think he's playing for anything in particular.
Let's talk St Kilda. Mate, the ruckman no one's talking about. Tommy Campbell. 302,000 ruck forward.
We're not talking about him for a good reason, though.
Mate, he might be the only tall person left the rate they're going. They've lost a key forward every week.
Too.
Is he?
He's injured too.
Oh my goodness. Who do they have?
Well, they're looking at a guy from Carlton's VFL program now.
Gee whiz. All right, well, let's move on from Tom Campbell. Jade Gresham is an exciting player who I was huge on last year as a breakout contender. And while I had him in my team, he was a pretty solid scorer. And then, of course, he stopped being a pretty solid scorer. But he was good last year. He was, people kind of forget, but he opened the year with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 scores of 99 plus in the first 13 games. And that's a decent hit rate. He just kind of, he got hurt and got some niggles and then never really, and then he missed obviously the last 4 games of the season. But he's certainly someone I think who can improve on their average in a contract year.
You know how we were talking about when we were doing the depth charts that Jaden Stevenson is the kind of player that Alistair Clarkson will probably hate?
Yeah.
I feel like Jade Gresham is the kind of player that Ross Lyon would probably hate.
Okay, that's good to know.
Just
Ross Lyon's going to spite Jade Gresham out of a decent free agency contract.
I think he's gonna be one of those players that's in, out, in, out. I don't think he's gonna be 22 games, just by what I know of Ross Lyon. In saying that though, Ross Lyon reckons he's changed, so he could play 22 games and hate a different type of player now. But he just feels like the kind of player that Ross Lyon will be like, "Nah, I don't like you anymore."
Yep. Fair enough. Also on this list, Dan McKenzie, Jimmy Webster, and Mason Wood. The Saints have Lance Franklin. That's going to be a name. I'm sure we'll have plenty of articles saying,
The
"Oh,
Saints? You mean you mean Sydney?
Sydney have Lance Franklin." I'm sure we're going to see plenty of articles of people saying, "Oh, there's some interest. There's some interest from the Blues or whoever it is."
There's also interest from retirement villages. He's going to be 40.
Yeah. Lewis Melican, Dane Rampion, Sam Reed. It's not a particularly exciting list of players, but it's a particularly experienced list of players.
West Coast have Jamie Cripps, Shannon Hearn, Jeremy McGovern, Luke Shuey, and then Zane True and Isaiah Window because they were delisted. Again, there's nothing really here that's going to be Supercoach relevant. Jeremy McGovern, though.
Well, I'm more interested in a Shannon Hearn, as you pointed out in our chat. Like, we said do not pick him all year, and he played 19 games and averaged 105. That's a really good return.
It is, but his surname also sounds like the noise his hamstrings make whenever he takes a kick out. So I don't think you can select him.
No, neither. Yeah, it's the same thing as last year. Copy paste. And Jamie McGovern, I also don't think you can pick just based on his injury history, but he is an appealing price at sub 500k.
The only reason I point out Jeremy McGovern earlier is because our good mate Foz Daddy Matt Forrest, who you wrote the Whispers article with, he had him the year that he finished top 100 a couple of years ago.
Interesting.
He brought him in as the final piece in his defense. And it's what separated him from from people around his rankings. It's what moved him up and the rest down because Jeremy McGovern was able to put together a few performances against higher ranked teams because the ball was coming down there that often. So I'm not saying he's super relevant to start with, but he's not someone you should cross off your list.
I like it, Demo. I like it. That's a good point. Western Bulldogs will round this one out. Oscar Baker, Taylor Durea, Ryan Gardner. No relevance from those three to us. Tom Liberatore, who I swear is out of contract every year, is out of contract and a free agent.
It wouldn't surprise me if the AFL website has no idea what his contract is.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Averaged 105 last year, 103 the year before, 160 the year before that. He's not going to improve dramatically enough regardless to be selectable as a mid-only player. Toby McLean, Damo, I know we talked about him before the pod and he hasn't been training in the A team. I'm still backing him in at 178k and I think he's going to well and truly increase his average of 0 from last year.
Yeah, obviously. He's going to at least be the sub most weeks if he's not in the 22. So I think he's going to be a good selection. I just don't know if he's going to play 22 games in the main squad. There's a name on this list that I think will fly under the radar, but could be a very solid pick for a team if he ends up at the right place.
Go on.
Bailey Williams.
He has the capability of being both Supercoach relevant and real football relevant, given the opportunity to play the right role. Averaged 84 in 2020, 77 in 2021 across 19 games. Played 21 games for an average of 57.6 last year, but had a few games where he was either the sub or was subbed out. And, he wasn't amazing last year, but I agree with you. I think in a career year, he's going to outperform his price point of an average of 57.6. And I think he's going to be probably somewhere else next year. And I think he'll become a sturdy contributor, like a Nick Newman-esque level of contributor.
See, I was more thinking that he could potentially... Well, we talked about Daniel Rich potentially coming to the end. Could Bailey Williams be the new Daniel Rich at Brisbane?
Lockie Cowan's the new Daniel Rich. But Bailey Williams could definitely put his hand up for the mantle. Also on that list was Tim O'Brien and Rourke Smith. So a few uninteresting players there. But Damo, mostly we just wanted to talk free agency.
Yeah, and I'd put Bailey Williams in the same conversation as Jeremy McGovern and Nathan Broad for potential Supercoach relevancy down the track. Not to start with, but,
No.
but if they have good years and you need someone solid towards the end of the season, they might be someone to have a look at.
Agreed. Well, that was fun. We covered off a lot of rubbish, Damo, so thank you for joining me.
It's been good to be here. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for plugging the mailbag at the beginning of the episode.
Yep, get your questions in, #JockMailbag, email them in, it's on Twitter, comment it on the website. Surely by now you know the drill, community. Go Blues.